Welcome to the Richie Flow Nutrition Podcast. My name is Cameron Borg. On this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Mike Mew. Mike is a lecturer and the lead clinician at the London School of Facial Orthotropics. His primary interest is in the growth and development of the face, identifying the effects of changes in posture, function, and muscle tone and its relationship to orthodontic problems. Mike uses the Orthotropic system to reverse the underlying conditions that lead to crooked teeth, sleep apnea, snoring, and temporomandibular disorders, amongst a range of other symptoms. He is undertaking research to investigate how to improve these systems using modern technology and innovative applications. Unlike conventional orthodontics, where the teeth are mechanically shifted to fit the shape of the face, Orthotropics encourages and facilitates proper facial development and posture to ensure that the teeth have enough space so to prevent malocclusion. The importance of environmental factors are clearly being ignored and could greatly assist orthodontic therapy and general health. Dr. Mew aims to change a section of modern medicine by making it evidence-based and focused on the long-term health of patients. Mike is someone who I have a great deal of respect for, as he has been begging for genuine debate as to the etiology of malocclusion, crooked teeth, for many years without having anyone who opposes his ideas step up to the plate. His ideas are generally as follows. Crooked teeth essentially do not appear in human skulls until very recently. Therefore, malocclusion cannot be based in any real sense on genetics alone. Environmental factors including poor air quality, soft food, bottle feeding, allergies causing chronic mouth breathing, poor posture, and improper swallowing have led to craniofacial dystrophy, or improper growth of the face, resulting in crooked teeth and narrowed airways. By shifting these environmental inputs, proper facial development can be promoted, allowing space for the teeth to grow unimpeded. Mike, much like his father before, is a visionary who has placed his career on the line in the pursuit of truth. I'm very humbled that he took the time to speak with me. He's one of the most passionate individuals I've ever spoken to. So with all that being said, I really hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you so much, Mike.
That's okay.
I guess let's just get stuck into it. I really want to know where your ideas about malocclusion differ from the mainstream, and how you came to these ideas, with your experience.
Okay, so it's interesting when we talk about mainstream. So we're going about mainstream, it's going to be about mainstream orthodontics, because I'm an orthodontist. I was a dentist clearly before that. And I've done an orthodontic program. And when you do an orthodontic program, or if you were to get the biggest, so here is Contemporary Orthodontics by William Prophet. You read here, and you read in the etiology section, I think it's chapter 4, about, it's chapter 5. So here we go. Here in etiology is chapter 5. And it gives a fairly balanced argument. It doesn't come to any conclusions, but it talks about the environment, it talks about the genes, and it quotes quite a few papers. And of course, it quotes papers from my favorite researcher, Robert Carcini. This is the most fantastic book in the world. This is one of my Bibles. It's out of print, but I've got an electronic version. Right. And it talks about it talks about basically not specifically the causes, but talks about the potential causes, and it gives, it talks about the genetics, and it talks about the environment, just the environmental genetic directions. Okay, now Prophet, which is the Bible of most orthodontic programs around the planet, clearly the most influential orthodontic textbook in the world, and although it gives a relatively balanced argument, you turn the next page and it's as if those arguments have been forgotten, and malocclusion is going to be treated as if it is caused by the genes.
Yeah.
You think about the treatments we apply for, when we're treating crooked teeth. We're going to do, if there's too many teeth, we're either going to take teeth out or widen the arches. There's a great debate about that, and clearly there's a limit to how much you can widen arches. And so often orthodontists will say, well, we have to take teeth out in this case. And in addition to that, but that's not talking about wisdom teeth, by the way, that's often in addition to wisdom teeth.
Right.
Then the remaining teeth are made straight. If there's a big discrepancy between the bones of the face, like asymmetries, or the bottom, this is the top teeth, bottom teeth, top teeth are too far forward, the bottom teeth are too far back, they'll break the bottom jaw, move it forwards, usually. If the bottom jaw is further forward, often, well, mix. Sometimes they break the bottom jaw or they break the bottom jaw, but they reset these jaws in different positions. So although there's a very good argument made, sort of they I think they're a bit biased, but they appear to be fairly fair in presenting both sides of the argument, then that's ignored when it comes to treatment. So the mainstream orthodontic opinion is that it's probably genetic. Well, we're treating it as if it's genetic. And if I drill down on an orthodontist, that's what they'll ultimately believe. If I drill down, if I take an orthodontist, well, very rarely do I ever got the chance for any meaningful conversation with any orthodontist, ever. Please challenge me. I'd love anyone to challenge me. I've got a massive YouTube channel. Come have a debate with me. Any orthodontist. Don't criticize me behind closed doors. Criticize me to my face. That's what science is about. Take the challenge. Now, so the orthodontists inherently believe malocclusion. They think there's some environmental influences like thumb sucking, maybe a tongue thrust, but they inherently believe it's genetic, the predominantly genetic, particularly the position of the bones. And of course, when you think about that, the position of the bones, well, then we go across the public opinion. So clearly, when I'm talking about mainstream, are you boxing me within the profession of mainstream or generic mainstream? Because most people, because everyone with a face has got an interest in this subject because they've got one, tend to think that the way their face grew was genetic. Okay? So, or largely genetic. And of course, you look like your parents. There's no way around that. But what I'm not saying that the way your face should grow isn't genetic. I'm saying the way it shouldn't grow is genetic. So let's just unpack that a little bit. So we talk about your face having its full genetic potential. Now, if you're in an ideal situation, your face should grow ideally. So you've got your genes are right and your environment is right, then you get great facial development. And of course, you see people walking off the African Serengeti, the Australian outback, but less of it now because they don't have quite such a traditional lifestyle. Or the Amazon rainforest, or some of these completely untouched places where they really are living a Stone Age existence. Well, they've all got fantastic facial architecture. They really do. You see that guy off the African Serengeti, all 32 teeth, so including wisdom teeth, in beautiful alignment, in big, wide, strong, well-cut faces. And of course, those faces look good. Which is also looking healthy, two things. So that's kind of that's the long version of where I differ from the mainstream. Now, how I came to conclusions, well, of course, my father's John Mew. He's one of the most outspoken orthodontists on the planet. He's the guy that, none of this is new. All of these bits of information, I mean, it was all of this was talked a lot more about at the turn of the 1900s. So 100 years ago, because it was just obvious that, we hadn't had so much crooked teeth, and suddenly crooked teeth seemed to be appearing from nowhere and all these problems. And people were asking the questions, why? Of course, you had a lot of populations that weren't as developed. So it was that much easier comparison. You had some societies that already relatively well developed. You'd already had, electric, we had got gas street lighting and the underground service. And, lots of London was pretty modern. And yet you could go to lots of places in the world 100 years ago that were very undeveloped. And so you had this, much more contrasting lifestyles and also it was early, there wasn't that many crooked teeth even in the developed societies. And people were much more, they had a slightly different mindset, difficult to describe. But it was it was talked about. If you go back in some of the ancient texts, people were talking about this. They were talking about tough diets. They were talking about breathing a little bit, not quite so much as they do now.
Right.
And so, but my father was one of these people who was, he's got great vision, and he was putting more things together than other people and coming up with cohesive treatments and cohesive philosophies. And he was sensitizing all this information, having his own ideas himself. And he, is the father of vast swathes of different treatment processes and conceptual ideas, and has influenced a lot of people. He has been an influence on many of the influential speakers that are influencing people today, even me. Now, see, I did my own reading around. I don't like to be, I don't like to parrot what my father says. I want to see it for myself. I mean, again, let's go back to Rob Corradini's book, the wonderful title. He's not the most scintillating writer, How Anthropology Informs the Orthodontic Diagnosis of Malocclusion's Causes. It's not going to be a bestseller.
Yeah.
But he and most anthropologists are putting this change down to a change in diet. So now, wind back a little bit. We were talking about being mainstream or not mainstream. If you pick up anthropology texts, most anthropologists, so what anthropologists have known for years, and since we've had anthropology, that you go back in time, everyone's got straight teeth.
Mm-hmm. And
the more, so clearly anthropology is often looking at graves. That's often where they find material to look at, because we would bury people when they die. That then gets forgotten about, and then with modern equipment or by accident, or you're making a building or something, you find a grave. And then the anthropologists can look at the grave and they discern information from what they see. And it was clear and obvious to them that the more sophisticated a society was, the more malocclusion and incorrect facial growth there was. So if I were to draw a nice line, it really was a line. That fact, it's more a line like that.
Right.
But it made a nice line. It was clear and obvious. I mean, you didn't need science to see this.
Yeah.
You needed, it was fairly obvious pattern of change that was going on. Of course, there's enough case examples with breathing and posture. And so that's how I formed my idea. Sorry, Cameron.
That's okay. When they were talking about diet, did they stress more the nutritional content of the foods that they were eating, or the type of
No.
You
see, you couldn't. It was very difficult. So the nutritional content. So we've got the content and consistency.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to really struggle with understanding content from graves.
Mm.
I mean, it's very recent. I mean, we saw there was this beautifully preserved house in the Fens in Cambridge that was recently found. So what they think that the people would live on these stilts, in huts on stilts in the marshes, and there was probably a raid or something, and one of these burnt down, and the stilts went so fast, the whole thing sunk into the mud, and the mud preserved it very well. And they were able actually to look at the last dinner someone had and work out what grains were in this dinner. And, then you got the odd bogman, people who were sacrificed or otherwise killed in bogs. Now, they don't know whether sacrificial people got a special last dinner, but you can look into their stomach and see what they had in them. But apart from these odd, rare examples, it's quite difficult to understand what the constituents of the diet were in the past.
Yeah.
So, that's a bit of a black hole, but you can tell the constituency of diet because you can look at the wear on the teeth.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, they might have had a bit of sand in the diet, particularly if they were a grain-based culture and they were grinding the grain to make flour. That's going to introduce some sand. When we talk about the daily grind comes back from people grinding sandstones, and you can see a lot of the women would have wear marks on their bones from where they would sit for an hour or two a day. That was hard work, the daily grind, making flour. So apart from a little bit of sand in the diet, you can give a good estimation of how hard people were chewing from how much wear you had on their teeth. And of course, they had a huge amount of wear on their teeth in the past, a lot of wear.
Yeah. I know Weston A. Price stressed fat-soluble vitamins in his work, and since then, speaking to Sandra Kahn, she seems to think that they are a significantly less important part as when compared to the consistency of the foods. They were eating, not only were they eating nutrient-dense foods, but these foods they required a lot of chewing, and they required strong jaws. So what do you think, is there a role of these fat-soluble vitamins in malocclusion and facial development, or if there is a connection, it's a tenuous one, in your opinion?
Well, I'd like to see some evidence, Brett. It would be great to see the evidence. I mean, one of the things I looked at and I thought was interesting. So I looked at vitamin D. Okay. Now, I just thought to myself, okay, let's do a little bit of hypothesizing here. So you're going to get more vitamin D in hotter climates, with some sunnier climates, just per se. Even if you don't stand in the sun, you're just going to absorb more vitamin D if you're in a sunnier climate. Okay. In Britain, here I am, come winter months, I don't think I stand in the sunshine much at all, because, I'm work before the sun goes up. So for example, I spent some time when I was working in Denmark. I would get to work before the sun comes up. I'd be in work before the sun comes up, and I would leave after the sun went down.
Yeah.
So I basically indoors the entire time, where my office had a small window, and where I worked in the clinic was considerably back from the windows. So I could go, probably the darkest 4 months of the year was seeing no sunlight. Now, you then take Australia. So you've got an identically genetic population initially from the British, who were in Australia, and they've got a lot of sunshine, and they tend to have a much more outdoor culture than you do in Britain. Or they're European, so I don't know the much different from Scandinavia or not, but you don't see the difference in malocclusion. You've got roughly the same level of, almost exactly the same levels of malocclusion in Europe and Australia, down the line, exactly the same. I mean, slight difference now because they've got more of an Asian genetic base from being close to the Far East. So you're not seeing a difference, and you'd expect to see a difference. And then I looked at vitamin A, and of course, most vitamin A deficiencies are in the developed world.
Yeah.
And that's where you have the least malocclusions.
Yeah.
So this is just me ballparking it.
Yeah.
So, I'd love there to be a vitamin A and D would be helpful for malocclusion, because I could give my patients vitamin A and D, and that would make what a difference that would make. But when you talk to the Weston A. Price Foundation, they talk about this pre-term injury, as if you make certain that you need to have enough vitamin A's and D's and possibly K in your system the moment of conception. Now that may be true. However, it's one of those things that it's a little bit too precise, and it's a little bit too I would say a bit too it's too easy for that to be an excuse.
Yeah.
And we're going to reflect back and just look at the time of where Price. Okay, so Price was around at the beginning of the 1900s. He was a contemporary, so he was contemporary of Mellanby. So Mellanby found out it was vitamin D, Mellanby, didn't it? Wasn't it?
I can't remember. So it's been a
Okay,
while
so
since
anyway,
I've read
I
the
think it was
book.
vitamin D. So Mellenby had done the rickets in children in East
Yeah,
London,
yeah,
and he'd worked out that was vitamin D. And of course, that was the first proper identified vitamin. And of course, we'd already worked out from trial and error that limes and lemons and fresh fruit prevented scurvy. You know, the famous British would stock up on limes on their boats because limes would keep for a long period of time. So, and that's why the Americans call us limeys, because we had limes in the boats. And we would give those to the sailors on the boats and prevent scurvy. We didn't know why. But after Mellenby worked out vitamin D, then they said, oh, well, maybe there's something in limes preventing vitamin C. And then, of course, all these other vitamins were coming down. It made absolute sense to Price that there could be a vitamin for these jaws.
right.
But of course, Price didn't exclude the consistency of the dye. He never didn't look at it. So if you don't look at something, you can't say could not be from that factor.
Yeah.
You can't say that. So as I said, I'm trying to follow the science. I'm trying to work out what's really going on, because that is what science is about. And I mean, I had a long chat with Sally Fallon by email,
Right.
and I met her at her conference.
Yeah.
And I had a chat with her, and she's got a forceful lady. And, I know there's an old phrase in you should hear what other people are saying, because you'll learn from that. She didn't seem to be very interested, in my opinion. I think I got a couple of words in the conversation.
Yeah.
And she was busy telling me, and I don't think she drew breath on that. And I then had this email conversation. I just said, look, afterwards, I just pondered, and I thought we didn't really have a good engagement. Of course, one of my sort of oaths, I've got a lot of oaths to myself. One of my oaths is I'm going to leave no stone unturned in my quest for the truth. Okay? So I wanted to see, whether there were some things. And of course, so I kept, in this conversation, I kept saying, Sally, well, what's the core base, information upon which you're basing your information? And we kind of had a circular conversation as I broke it down, broke her down on this. And eventually she sees someone else in and says, oh, so-and-so, show him that paper on vitamin K. And I was thinking, oh, that paper, that's in the singular. Anyway, she showed me this paper, or the other person showed me the paper, and this is a famous paper, and I think it's in Prophet's book, where they have was a bunny rabbit, I think, rabbits.
Yeah, right.
And they've starved them with vitamin K, and they get stunted noses. Well, okay, 2 points on that. First of all, vitamin K deficiency is pretty difficult to do, you see people with vitamin A deficiencies, you see people with vitamin D deficiencies kind of exist. But as far as I'm aware, it's really quite difficult to get a vitamin K deficiency. Whereas we're seeing malocclusion on the goddamn whole population, in everyone. Remember, those guys walking up the African Serengeti often had a centimeter of space behind their wisdom tooth. Now we're talking about kids not only not getting wisdom teeth, that's almost endemic now. People turn around and say, oh, well, we're evolving. Have you read what Darwin said? Do you understand what it says? Because if you do, then you're not going to say we're evolving.
Yeah.
Okay? Maybe you've got some sort of epigenetic concepts and some higher level ideas, but it's not base evolution. That's not how evolution works. Come on, be real. So we've got this major change in most of the people, and it just seems unlikely that could be a vitamin K deficiency. It just doesn't figure in my head. Then, of course, what you do notice with this bunny rabbit is that the face is stunted in a very symmetric way. So both upper and lower jaws are equally stunted. Okay. Now, that looks much more like a clever growth adaptation, because, yes, maybe lack of vitamin K is causing a problem. I don't know, looking at those bunny rabbits, that the teeth don't all shrink in size as well. So when you've got some of these generalized influences, the body's pretty good at making adjustments so that everything works out well. You know, I've often done one of my father's great things is a crocodile's mouth. You know, you've got a tooth that's a meter over there, and you've got to come a meter back down the top jaw, go around the head to the bottom jaw, then go forward another meter. So these teeth on the body are 2 meters from each other. How do they work out how they're going to meet? And yeah, they don't really. You know, there's no genetic programming. You've got local environmental stuff going on to decide how they're going to come into contact. And that's the only way it can really work. And then, of course, you've got to get program how those jaws come to roughly the same length. Well, probably a little bit of environmental control has to go on in that. And then once you've got environmental control, you've got mechanisms for compensation. Yeah, it's a well-designed thing. Animals, you know, life is they're well constructed. You know, this is a well constructed concept. Yeah. And I'm thinking, and this is my base premise, is that our growth has gone quite wrong, really very wrong already. Okay. And that's so sweeping statement, because I'm saying basically most people who are alive in a Western society are really quite deformed. How else are we going to put it? You know, and if you don't have space for your wisdom teeth, if your teeth didn't come straight naturally, then you've got problems with the way this grew. And that could have other significant health effects. You know, crooked teeth is only a problem amongst quite a few problems.
So if you had to steel man the conventional argument, like let's say you were arguing against yourself, what is the argument that you would make to bring your ideas down?
Oh, the big argument is it's very hard to get results.
Right.
Yeah, that's what whenever I start in this engagement of saying to the orthodontists, oh, but you know, malocclusion's an environmental issue. The main causes are, you know, the muscle effect, the resting posture, then function. They'll turn around and go, well, I'd like to see you publishing your results. And I go, okay, hang around. We've done a bit of a jump here. And you've purposely conflated 2 different things. You've conflated the point that your malocclusion is due to environment, and you've jumped across because you didn't want to argue that, because that's signed, sealed, and delivered. You know, that there is no, you know, it's a steel argument already. There's nothing wrong about that.
Yeah. Then
we've got the pathological process, which, well, no one ever talks about this. So I made I published a paper called craniofacial dystrophy, and that's trying to describe craniofacial, because the subject, incorrect trophy growth. So it's incorrect growth of the facial complex. That's basically what it means. And it's trying to map out the pathological process about what goes wrong. So they skip that because, well, we never talk about that, do we? And yet we should, because if there is an environmental influence, there has to be a pathological process via which it works. And no one's arguing, you know, here we go, Prophet again. Prophet doesn't go for argument. He does say, this, I love this graph here, you see. Here he's got that graph, and he's saying, you know, they talk about, they don't know the cause. Only 5% of the time do they know the cause.
Yeah.
And remember, where he says malocclusion, known cause, and normal malocclusion, well, his normal malocclusion in this group here don't have wisdom teeth. That's not normal malocclusion in my book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? So, you know, Homo sapiens supposed to have 32 teeth, not 28. So I just don't buy that normal occlusion. Okay, I think a lot's got malocclusion, and they only understand that a cause of 5%. Most of those are thumb suckers. So, I mean, he gives that argument. They don't cover a path, so that you know there must be an environmental influence. And when someone doesn't know the cause, and they've had DNA sequencing machines running 24/7 for 2 decades, and they haven't still found the genetic cause, it's because they don't want to look into this environmental argument. So there's clearly a strong environmental role. That's a pretty steel argument. So we should have a discussion on this pathological process. We're dying for that. Okay. I did a 6-year letter writing campaign in the UK trying to get a debate on the etiology. Just, you know, we need to talk about why teeth are crooked, you know, to the British Orthodontic Society, to everyone. Yeah. You know, I'll give you that link if you want to put down. Then So we should have the debate on the pathology. And, could I make that a steel debate? No, but I think I would win that on balance of probabilities. If you look at what Karl Popper was saying, when, the father of scientific philosophy, who lived literally up the road from here, within a mile of this place, he was saying that you need a best fit hypothesis. And I think I could win a best fit hypothesis. So my weakest argument is on the treatments that I'm doing to try and change people, because it's hard to change people. If you put, the principle of my treatment is people with good facial development tend to have straight teeth. People with poor facial development tend to have crooked teeth. So what I do is I try to change people's facial development, okay? With the premise that if they have better facial form, they will have straighter teeth. I don't tend to make the teeth straight. I tend to sort of push them into a general position and expect the child to make their own teeth straight. Now, if I want to compare my result to an orthodontist, what are they going to look at?
Yeah.
How straight the teeth are.
Yeah.
Now, they're going to put braces on. They're going to get straight teeth because they put a mechanical device to make the teeth straight. Okay? Yeah. I haven't got the teeth very straight. There'll be gaps, there'll be rotations, there'll be little things, because I didn't make the teeth straight. I got the individual to make their own teeth straight.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, they compare and they go, I'm useless. I mean, they must think I'm absolutely incompetent. I think the classic situation is, let's say you're a dentist, and this must happen to lots of referring dentists around. Dentists, they never refer me patients, and this is why. One person comes in, a girl comes in, a girl or boy, remember I'm being sexist here. A person comes in, and the dentist looks at them, and they've been treated by me. Now, what I do is I do an intense phase of treatment, and I keep them wearing an appliance that's guiding growth, because growth takes a little while to happen. As it happens, so they need to wear this appliance at night, at least, all the way through the growth period. Orthodontists recommend a retainer for the rest of their lives. I just have let's call it an active retainer, just during the growth phase. So they know they're still being treated by me. The dentist looks at this person, and the teeth are pretty straight, but there are odd bits that aren't quite right. Big, wide arch. I mean, it's huge. I mean, every single one of my patients ends up with these huge, great big jaws. It's a lot, and by default, I'm believing that means they've got huge airways. And of course, their faces are forward, so they've got loads of space back here. The tongue's never going to fall in the airway. I believe they're never going to get sleep apnea. I believe they're much, much healthier. Faces are looking better. The teeth are considerably straighter than when they started. The upper 6 front teeth, I always get them straight. And that's what people want. That's I'm happy with them. That's what the agreement I had with them before is.
Yeah.
But of course, the dentist looks at this case and he goes, look, they've been under treatment for 7 years and they've still not got the teeth properly straight. These guys must be fools. They must be literally incompetent. And on such a beautiful person. It's crazy. Now, that dentist hasn't been taking photographs. He can't remember that she looked like the backside of a bus when she started treatment. Person looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, next patient walks in. Perfect orthodontic result. Okay. Now, she's wearing retainers. If she didn't wear the retainers, the result would go completely.
Yes.
But we know, really, relapse is bad. Okay. And the dentist goes, now there's a proper orthodontic. The teeth fit together absolutely perfectly. I don't know if the individual really worries about the fact that his molars are class 1 she matches angles 6 keys of malocclusion. I don't think she really cares about that. Okay, all she really wants, it wants is 6 upper straight front teeth. However, the dentist didn't take photographs. He's not aware that she used to look quite pretty and now looks like the backside of a bus, he, she, or it. So, and that's the thing, you see, because we've got, you were comparing apples and pears. And also, it's, really difficult to consistently change people. And, this is very early days. I clearly say to people, my treatment is terrible. Terrible. It is only, in my opinion, better than the alternatives.
Mm.
Okay. But if I've got a kid, this is the thing I'm saying, that, the things that changes, look at my videos, we had strong muscles and we kept our mouth closed, standing up straight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what's happened? We've got weak muscles, soft modern food, and we're hanging our mouths up. Okay. So the faces drop down. Right now. And as the face drops down, it changes shape. Oh, I've lost thread of my conversation there. Anyway, why I've left it, because coming back to diet, I think that where I think diet really does cut in here is in allergies.
Right.
So I think there's two things that happen. The two major contributors to malocclusion are the muscle effect. So I'm saying word effect because we're not sure if it's the amount of time you eat or the hardness of the food or what exactly you do with the jaws. But so we call it muscle effect. The second one we think is posture. So, we should breathe out in our noses. Our ancestors breathe out noses. You get a blocked nose, you can't breathe. Your mouth drops down.
Yeah.
And then what starts of an obligatory necessity becomes a habit. And if you hang your mouth open and you have weak muscles, your face drops down. It lengthens. And as it lengthens, that reduces the cross-sectional area because, the longer you get here, shallower you get here, and the shallower you get here, then you reduce cross-sectional area, and then you've got less space for the teeth. Bam, bam, that's malocclusion. Depending on what you do in response to this insult to your health, depends what type of crookedness you get. Classic example, if you go to the Western societies, we tend to do this, and we tend to get the bottom jaw set back. So that actually what's happened from ancestry is this has happened. And if you go to the east of the world, there's a tendency to drop the tongue in the mandible, hold the mandible forward. And that's a great way of clearing your airway. Your face is dropped back into your airway.
Yeah.
As it at some point, you move the mandible forwards with the tongue in it, opens your airway, happy, you can breathe. What's the most important thing in your life? Anyway, so that affects the way you respond to it, and you may do that on a familial basis, determines the type of pattern you get. The generic types of pattern is we've got this change in the environment. We never saw it on our ancestors. You just don't get it in other mammals, wild mammals. And where the ones that do screaming environmental change. But I do think that nasal obstruction, that is where I think diets really have come in to causing problems. I hands up, I was very unconvinced of the diets made any difference. I could go back to the noughties up until realistically. So I had Crohn's disease, and I had 2 ileocecal resections, one in 98 and another in about 2003. And in about 2010, 2011, I think I went to the Ancestral Health Symposium in UCLA in California. And I'm now taking steroids regularly. I'm getting a lot of pain. I'm regularly finding problems with my health. I walk around this conference and everyone's talking about the paleo diet. This was real early days in the paleo diet. And of course, I've been sort of linked with the paleo groups ever since. And I just thought to myself, well, I've got problems. It looks like I'm headed towards another resection, another major surgery. I can't afford that time off work and out my life, apart from the issues of surgery. Everyone's talking about these diets. Well, and I'm on the maximum dose of azathioprine, which is a tough old medicine. It's immunosuppressant. I'm taking steroids regularly. I thought, well, solve this for a bunch of bananas. Let's give it a go. So I started. To be honest, I should have read some books, but it's not me, really, is it? So I gave it a go. I thought, what sounds paleo to me? And I just had more meat, I cut out wheats and dairies and things like that, and it made the world of difference.
Yeah.
So here's me having always just thought, well, it's just food, isn't it? And, I ate, when I was in my 15, 16, when that growth spurt, I used to eat, but I was eating a loaf of bread a day. We had this fantastic bakery, and I was eating a loaf of bread a day. Yeah. And I loved breakfast cereal. I would sometimes go and buy a box of breakfast cereal and a big, 4 pints of milk, and just eat a lot in one go. I had a sweet tooth. I loved sugar.
Yeah.
And hey ho, funny enough, I had Crohn's disease. So where we go, we always, nothing I like more than eating my words. To be proven wrong is to learn.
Exactly. Yeah.
My phrase is, to swivel on a decimal point. A decimal point of statistical significance. If you can show me something that's statistically significant, hey, I want to change. I want to change tomorrow.
Right.
Being dogmatic does not help you. And, I'm sure there's lots of people listening to me here will go, oh, well, he's wrong about Weston Price, he's wrong about this. Well, show me some evidence. Please, I want to be proven wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the vitamin A and D's and K's, I don't think they're holding the argument. You want to. And one thing Sally Fallon said to me, she just announced to me that, they've managed to cure malocclusion in all of these groups, and they've got this whole society of people who have been taking vitamin A and D and K, and their kids don't have malocclusion. Well, sorry, but some of these people are writing to me because their kids are being recommended surgery.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, in my viewpoint, my hunch here is if you need surgery, then you've probably had a massive breathing problem that's been present for most of your growth and development, that has probably had a massive impact on your cognitive development. The research is pretty bloody good on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
David Gonzalez and other people showing that, what do they get? Something like a 7-10 point IQ jump in a year from treating people with sleep apnea.
Yeah.
There's no method of teaching could come close to that. Basically what you've got is people who can't, you can't sleep properly. It's so corrosive. If you've had a night's sleep, I didn't sleep well last night, really badly. And I came in this morning and I was hoping to get some work done before this video. And I tell you, I was struggling, really, really struggling to get things done. I'm terrible if I didn't sleep very well.
Well, let's talk about the sleep connection with facial development and how facial development, particularly the development of a long face, like you were talking about before, how that impacts the nasal passage. Just speaking from a personal point of view, I had conventional orthodontic treatment. I had braces, and I have quite a narrow V-shaped palate now. And my nasal passage is, I can tell it's not what it should be. Nasal breathing is not as easy as I would like it to be, and it's taken quite a bit of effort for me to learn how to nasal breathe again.
I mean, okay, I'll see if you can send you this image from a publication. It just shows the difference in the nasal airway between a pre-industrial, not even that ancestral, just a pre-industrial and post-industrial nasal capacity. And it's so stark and so massively different that you're just going, those guys would never get a blocked nose.
Yeah.
It would just never happen. But it's kind of two places where, so the basis, if you've got blocked noses hanging about home, you've got weak muscles, your face gets longer. I mentioned a little bit like someone has a stroke. So if you had a stroke, you see how your face drops down. Remember, most strokes you see are only the facial soft, muscles of facial expression. They're not these big muscles.
Yeah.
You've seen someone who's a big muscle damaged from a road traffic accident or something. It's massively more profound. massively. But it's a little like we've got bilateral stroke, the face is dropping down. As the face drops down, it gets longer and thinner. So you tend to get blockages up here because the whole space, that nasal space gets narrower and narrower, and you get blocked noses. Then also, because the face is dropping down, it's downswinging. This is a concept of craniofacial dystrophy. It's downswinging. The tongue, which is attached here, closer and closer into your airways. And at night, you can't breathe. Okay? So not only is the jaw getting narrower, it's getting shorter, but the whole jaw is moving down towards the airway. Yeah. So it's this three-dimensional change. Now, I think that, we've got two things going on here. It's your environment's changed, and that's largely the problem in the first place. That's why you needed to see an orthodontist. Then there's this really, really controversial thing. Does orthodontics make it worse? Well, there's a large body of professional opinion that thinks it can make it worse. Look at some of the works of Bill Hang and my father, just saying, hello, wake up. And all they really want is conversation. And the way that conversation's being treated is suspicious. Anyway, basically, everything's set back. It's narrow. Now, it's tough when you're in that situation. Huh? Lead me with another question, because again, I was thinking too deep.
Well, let's talk about the environmental inputs that would go into creating proper facial development. What are we missing?
Good facial development.
Yeah.
So putting in the hierarchy, I mean, there's muscle effect, then you've got posture, how you rest the face, then you've got function. So, and blocked noses really affecting the posture and to some degree the function. I went lower and I was starting to look at the next layer down of problems. You would look at things like breastfeeding and other things going down there. And then general body posture and, things like texting. But it's, you stick to the top one. So the top one, now, chewing gum. I mean, I'll put a plug in for this. My favorite gum at the moment is this one here, Stronger. I don't advocate people chewing gum because in theory, it's perfect. It's a great idea. Just use the system more. Okay. So, I'm saying that clearly I use this system more. I've got huge, great big muscles.
Yeah.
Here's the lump of chewing gum I was chewing just before this interview, and my muscles are still sort of, I can see like a post-workout burn in my muscles, and I'm doing that almost every day.
Yeah.
With some, that's 2 sticks of the gum I just showed you. And but I can't recommend that in case someone's going to get jaw joint problem. So, hey, I can tell you, in theory, that makes a lot of sense. As I said, good point here. We all eat processed food. Either you buy it pre-processed or you use your inbuilt processor.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, if you don't use your inbuilt processor, it doesn't develop as well. That's not crazy revelation. If I went down the gym and started exercising and using this unit of my body, it would get bigger. And no one's going to be surprised if I said that. Yeah? I go and meet this guy with a fantastic body. I don't think he's been sitting on the sofa his entire life. I think he's got off the sofa, he's gone down the gym, hope he's not used steroids. And that's obvious. You can see, I can chew,
Yeah.
And I've got a big jaw. Funny enough, big jaw, it can fit all my teeth and, of course, my tongue. So use it or lose it. I mean, if you're familiar, it's Wolf's Law down the line.
Yeah, yeah.
So using your system is massively important. Then, of course, breathing out of your nose is going to help. I used to dismiss where the air went, okay? However, I think there is it seemed to be, so when, my youngest was getting real bad blocked noses, snoring, making a lot of noise, because I knew the importance of that. So what I did, I widened her top jaw because I widened her, and this was an intervention. So I did 4.5, 5 years old. I widened the top jaw. That opened her airway up. And then I started a lip taping. So this is, some other intervention you can do. I've got here, the brands are sometimes, the kit is sometimes useful. This is a slightly more expensive tape, but you can use this during the daytime. And, if you're going to do some work in the office, do that. And of course, what you do is you get used to that. And the nice advantage of this tape is you can put it there on the back of my phone. Well, next time I use my phone, I can pop it back on my lips again.
Yeah.
So I don't have to go to the box. I don't have to find the box, take the box out, do it, because that is going to be a gumption trap. But I suggest you use the other micropore tape at night. Use that during the daytime to get used to it. Then use the other tape at night. Then work on your body posture and work on swallowing and all of these other things. There's lots you can do. And of course, this is what mewing has become.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you about resting posture. This is something that Sandra Khan sort of stressed a lot more to me.
Well, this is Sandra Khan was a big disciple of my father.
Yes. Yeah, she spoke very highly of you.
Yeah. So what we're going here is to the tropic premise, and this is my father's concept. So I think that the tropic premise was kind of his big baby. If you look at so much of what he thinks and what he says, it relates back to the tropic premise. So the tropic premise, so a premise is a concept idea, and tropos is growth, so it's the idea of growth. And he says, if you have the tongue on the roof of your mouth, if you have your lips together and your teeth in or near contact, and remember, for those guys worried about holding your teeth together, if you have your tongue on the roof of the mouth, you don't clench.
Yeah.
Not if your tongue's popular, it's not going to happen because you've got your reciprocal system working. Okay. See my video, The Cause and Cure of Clenching and Bruxing.
It's a great video.
More information on that. So the posture is vitally important. So I give a good analogy of this. I remember when I was in Brighton, I had a guy, hang around, I'm just checking time on that because we've got a time out relatively shortly.
Yep.
So when I was living in Brighton, there was an old lady who had this great big bony lump on her neck. And I'd see her around as I walked around. And then, hey presto, one day I'm working in the maxillofacial department. I walk in and there she is sitting on the seat. And of course, I felt this mass and we x-rayed it. And we didn't have three-dimensional imaging at the time, but it was a bony lump. And it was basically, we think it was somewhere around in the mastoid or somewhere around here in the mastoid, the sternocleidomastoid. So it's a muscle that comes from that lump there. We think somewhere around there, she got a little cyst or something in the bone and then just no one treated it. And what a cyst is that you have, it's skin cells. Instead of the outside the body, they get mixed up and they get on a loop. So they make a sphere inside the body. They think they're still on the outside, so they shed skin. And as they shed skin into the middle, the skin breaks down, and that raises, this is a little bit complex, it raises the osmolarity. It's kind of like the saltiness.
Yep.
And then that draws in fluid. And then because it draws in fluid, it gets a little bit bigger. But the process of it expanding is simply no more than a slight increase in fluid pressure. Okay? So it's a very light, mild pressure inside a space. Because you've got bone on the outside, bone continues on the outside, but it had continued out to a lump, vast, big here. That was just a little bit of pressure. A little bit of pressure over a constant period of time. And so, I'm going to say that your tongue inside this housing here is a little bit like that cyst. And if you get your tongue up on the roof of the mouth, it's just going to slowly develop this whole bit of your face out. The problem is most people don't. And most people lie to themselves about how much they do that. And remember, the tongue should be sucked up and held there with suction. It shouldn't be pushing.
And is that true even into adulthood?
Yeah, it won't change.
Yeah, so
look at someone having a stroke when they're 80.
You can gradually change the shape as you're an adult if you keep correct oral posture with your tongue.
Well, in theory, yes. I mean, when I'm looking at mewing results, and I occasionally have a voyage down that rabbit hole, I don't really see people that identify with being much over 25 years old. Now, is that because the bone's younger and different under 25? yes, I think the bone is younger and more different under the age of 25. But I don't think it's something that inherent. I think that's one element. Sorry. When I see people at 80 changing because of strokes, you think, well, there is a possibility of change. Now, is that change because you don't have growth hormones? You can't, that must be part of it. But also it's probably the fact that you've become set in your ways. And you've become a creature of habits. And, the structure that you were created with your old posture and function now makes your old posture and function the most comfortable posture and function. Anything else is uncomfortable. So, I talk about you have muscle memory and you have memory from form memory. So the shape you have is acting as a memory of past events. It's like a very deeply scored channel in a record. If you wrote an old record of vinyl and it scores a scratch so deep you can't get out of it.
You're in a tricky situation at the moment, as I understand it. You're on hold with these proceedings.
My life has been on hold for 6 years with this court case. Okay,
yeah.
I can't go into the court case, but it's what I can say. It's almost completely philosophical. It's not about I've done something wrong or I've messed up or something. I've really injured people. It's a philosophical case that it's about the treatment I provide, and the argument is basically I shouldn't provide the treatment. And my annoyance with this whole case is that I spent 6 years asking for a debate on why teeth are crooked. Just asking everyone. It says in this, I said in profit, it says they don't know the cause. Okay, I'm saying there's a strong environmental influence, and my whole treatment is based on treating that environmental influence. And the prosecution expert is saying it's genetic. I'm thinking, well, hang around. The General Dental Council, I asked this body if they could repeat the debate of 1937 on why teeth are crooked. I think they're a government body. I think the public would want them to do that. I think that's a fair shout. If they'd done what they should have done, and literally that is just following the scientific process. I'm not asking for any more. Don't believe a word I say, but please let's follow the scientific process, starting with the cause. Why are teeth crooked? Okay, start there, we work up. Had they followed that process, well, then how could I be in a court hearing with the expert for the prosecution saying it's genetic? Go figure. And of course, I make comments on what I think is happening, and those comments need to be seen in context. And they've got to be seen in the context of an environmental etiology. And then with that, a pathological, but we have to have a pathological process. And of course, I make comments based on a pathological process. And it's easy to just sit back and say, oh, well, you can't prove that. Well, doesn't mean it's wrong. It means people haven't been interested in proving it because they want it to be genetic. They want the problem. So, you're saying unknown causes, known causes only 5%. Well, I'm sorry, please, can I have a debate with you about that?
Well, my understanding with genetics was genes code for proteins, and it's to try and explain morphogenesis based and form based on genes is like trying to tell you what a house looks like just by knowing what the kinds of bricks that they used. It never really made sense that you could determine.
I think it's more. We're more saying that if you draw the plan of the house, okay, it's a great plan. But if you've had several earthquakes and several hurricanes, and you could probably look at the plan and say, oh well, maybe there's inherent weaknesses here, inherent problems here. Should an earthquake or a hurricane turn up? Yes, but each hurricane and earthquake is going to be different. And that's going to shape what you eventually end up with 100 years down the line when it's been patched up numerous times.
Yeah, well, it seems to me like you're one of the only people who is really looking into an issue that is affecting almost everyone.
Almost everyone on the planet. And then you look on the knock-on effects. If this is the big cause of sleep apnea, which I personally believe it is, that's what's killing 10 or 20% of the population a decade early. If it is, you're having to hold your head forward because you're opening your airway, that's one of the major contributors to a forward head posture.
Yeah.
It's one of the major contributors to people not looking, this is a motive. It's a reason for most people not looking as attractive as they should be.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does matter too. I mean, the literature.
Yeah. A healthy structure looks good.
Yeah.
We're hardwired to be attracted to healthy people. And we always, and the revelation I think that people are going to go through when they realize that their face hasn't grown as it should have, and that it was either their parents, or the negligence of medical professionals, should that be the case, I think is going to be a real big revelation. I mean, that's why mewing's become so popular. That's why one of the reasons you're interviewing me now,
Yeah, absolutely. How can people support you before we go?
Okay, well, please come and join my Patreon. That would be really cool. We've got a lot of information on Patreon. You can support. So I'm not trying to promote my type of treatment. I think that would be a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the mewing app coming out. You can go and see that.
Yep.
My mewing app is different from others. Mine hasn't come out yet. Comes typical. Yep. But also support Prevent Crooked Teeth, because my whole thing's prevention. I'm trying to put together a technique to treat people, but that's hard work, and it's not economically viable. Really, it's hard. But we should be looking at prevention because that's cheap. Really cheap, simple, messages like sit up straight, shut your mouth, eat tough food.
Yeah.
So Prevent Crooked Teeth, please support that. Come and join our Patreon and get the mewing app out when it comes out.
I will put links to everything in the show notes. Mike, thank you so much for giving me some of your time. I'm really honored to have had the chance to speak with you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to support Mike and his revolutionary work, please consider subscribing to his YouTube channel called Orthotropics, becoming a Patreon member of his, keeping an eye out for the mewing app that will be available soon, and also supporting Mike on preventcrookedteeth.com. There are countless resources on chewing, posture, bruxism, mewing, and more on Mike's YouTube channel, so I strongly recommend you go there for further information. My conversation with Sandra Khan on episode 20 is also a great adjunct to this episode if you'd like to learn a little bit more. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can subscribe on Spotify and YouTube and leave up to a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. This is a simple no-cost way to support my work and help me reach more listeners. Please feel free to leave comments on my YouTube channel, as I really do try to read through as many as I can. I've also put links to all of my social media platforms and my website in the episode notes if you'd like updates on the podcast, information about health, or if you'd just like to reach out to me in general. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Take care.